Hey, what's up, guys? My name's John. Welcome to Daily Theology, Depressing Worldview Edition. So, George Barna is not going to cheer anyone up with this report, but this will probably be a pretty long video, so stay with it if you're interested in research, because this one has got a lot of very interesting data. And it's the Cultural Research Center from Arizona Christian University, and it's the Worldview Inventory 2021 at a glance. Now, I'm going to go through this page by page. There are 7 pages. So let's start here. The nation is undergoing a seismic generational shift in worldview by younger Americans, many of whom do not believe or care whether God exists and who overwhelmingly reject traditional moral values as irrelevant today. I think we all knew that sentence was coming. The beliefs of younger Americans, especially millennials, threaten to reshape national religious parameters beyond recognition. In fact, this radical spiritual revolution has created a generation seeking a reimagined world without God, the Bible, or churches, according to the latest research from the Cultural Research Center. So that's kind of a depressing statement, but I don't think we're that surprised by this, because when you undermine the authority of the Bible, you get a nation of entitled people, especially younger people that are technically, I'm a millennial, I'm sorry, I got thrown in there. I feel like they keep moving the age bands, and I wasn't, but now I'm just barely in there, and I don't like it, but I'm in there. And so these millennials, though, they have no basis for morality or reality, and the thing is, they don't care. And so for those of you trying to reason with people, again, this is a spiritual issue. It's a moral issue. This has nothing to do with logic. Atheism is illogical. And as we'll see in this report, there's a lot of interesting data about the different categories here. So stay with this video. So they don't really care. So that's kind of depressing, but not that surprising. Younger Americans are more likely than the 2 previous generations, 55 and over, to embrace horoscopes, which is demonic, Eastern mysticism, and this idea of astrology, and karma as a life principle, to see getting even with others as defensible, to accept evolution over creation. This is why Ken Ham over at the Creation Museum and Ark Encounter is right. It's a creation-evolution debate. See, when you throw off Genesis, as he says so frequently, you have no basis for believing the rest of the Bible either. This one's so surprising. They don't believe in owning property because they think it fosters economic injustice. Now, how can ownership of property, which is given in the Bible as a right, because the Bible says thou shalt not steal, which implies personal property, how can that facilitate economic injustice if you own something? Somebody's got to own something. And this is just stupidity, because this means that the means of production will be owned by who? The government. So this is communism. Way to go, millennials. Great thinking. So they don't believe that it's right to own property. This is very, very bad. Significantly more likely to define success in terms of personal happiness. Condone abortion if pregnancy could inhibit personal happiness. So murder is now okay if it inhibits your personal happiness. This is terrible. They view reincarnation as possible. How? How does that work? Who's in charge of dealing out the bodies? This is another thing that Ray Comfort often brings up with Hindus and people that believe in reincarnation. There has to be someone over this process, if you believe this nonsense, that is dealing out new bodies and assigning new things based on performance. And of course, there's no one there. That would be God if that existed in that way, and it doesn't. That's not how God works. It's blasphemous, and it's also ridiculous. So they believe in that. There you go. They embrace liberal positions on social and fiscal issues, as well as liberal theology. So liberalism is a cancer. It's basically humanism, and it invades, eats, and kills everything. Basically like a giant swarm of locusts, except imagine locusts with poisonous biting power. They're significantly less likely to embrace key tradition biblical teaching, including the nature of God, original sin, salvation, creation, life after death, human purpose, and biblical morality. That's pretty much the whole thing. They have an entirely different worldview. Strikingly, while 4 out of 10 people 55 or older, 40%, can be classified as born again based on their beliefs about personal salvation, just 1 out of every 6, 16%, meets the criteria. Instead, younger Americans are far more likely to embrace a counterfeit version of Christianity known as moralistic therapeutic deism, which is true, and we'll see this in the reports. The report section is the most interesting, so I may just do a separate video on that as well. To break it out, because this will probably be pretty long. Despite these generational differences, the dominant worldview among all 4 generations and builders is synchronism, this is where you just build your own religion. It's like the buffet at Denny's. You just kind of pile it all on there. Throw a little of this, a little Hinduism, a little astrology, a little pantheism. Hey, why not? Polytheism? Sure. And you build whatever you like. Basically, this is called idolatrism. And syncretism is very popular, even in American evangelicalism. It's very syncretistic because much of what is taught in regard to theological ideas and how we view evangelism, it's not biblical. According to Barna, a creator of this sad state of 7 pages of paper, began nearly 60 years ago as the boomers began to usher in an aggressive spiritual change. But the spiritual revolution among millennials has gone further, cutting ties with traditional biblical views. Of course, it has to go further. Liberalism never says enough. There's a proverb that says 3 things never say enough. Well, liberalism never says enough because what was once liberal and edgy is now boring and old, so it must go further in order to get the same reaction and the same sense of blazing a new trail. So this is the survey here, page 2. The dominant worldview of all 4 generations is syncretism. We covered that. None of the 4 generations had at least 1 out of its 10 members of whom of the 7 worldviews was dominant. A majority of Americans, regardless of their generation, consider themselves to be Christian. That doesn't make any sense. Ranging from a low of 57% of millennials to a high of 83% among builders. Let's see, as we look at this data, this 57%, it's not even close, because only 9% in the chart below will actually embrace biblical theism in the millennial generation. In fact, the highest worldview percentage for millennials is not biblical theism. It's not even close. So we'll get to that. So this is kind of how they got their criteria. Millennial spiritual revolution. They define success in life as happiness, personal freedom, or productivity without oppression. Without oppression. Well, guess what? You're oppressing the reality that you live in. You're oppressing your neighbors. You're oppressing babies. I mean, this whole worldview. So we believe in all these things without oppression. This is a definition of happiness from the minimalists, and they represent this generation well. And it's just a terrible definition. This is not a good relationship. Because there is going to always be oppression because you are sinful. And the millennials in this survey are sinful. And if they're agreeing with abortion and all of these other ideologies, they are oppressing everyone around them. And they're like the snotty little kid that doesn't see that they're the problem. Consider an abortion performed to reduce personal or economic or emotional discomfort to be morally acceptable. Well, these two seem like they don't go together. But I guess we're okay with contradictions because they don't have a right view of morality or reality. So anything goes when you're able to promote a contradiction. Let's see. They deem reincarnation a real possibility. That's just crazy. Be liberal regarding fiscal and social policies. So again, biblical responsibility, biblical accountability for your finances, avoiding debt, helping others, saving, being content. None of these apply if you're a liberal fiscal theologian. They champion liberal theology. Well, there you go. Be among the don'ts, people who either don't know if God exists or do not believe that he exists or do not care if he exists. Well, there's a good position. It's either A, the case that God created everything, or B, that nothing created everything. I'll choose neither. Well, when you have a decision between 2 choices and you choose the third option, you've automatically chosen the wrong option. So it's obvious from creation there's a creator. His name is Jesus. He's the creator. So if you're a millennial watching this, there, that category just got better. Millennials were also much less likely than Americans from older generations to hold numerous positions such as being deeply committed to practicing their religious faith, believing that the universe was designed and created. Yes, we know they don't believe this. Believing that human beings were created by God in his image, but are undermined by personal sin, therefore do not need to be redeemed through Jesus Christ, or therefore, excuse me, need to be redeemed through Jesus Christ. Accepting the idea of original sin, agreeing the universe purpose of humanity is to know, love, and serve God with all our heart, mind, strength, and soul. I mean, this is the core of why people are made. They don't embrace the Bible as their primary source of moral guidance. They believe that every moral choice we make honors or dishonors God. All these things are true, and they reject every single point. Wow. Okay, next page, Gen Xers. So this is the 90s generation that were adults in the 90s. Together, Gen Xers and Millennials, two generations currently in the late teens through mid-50s, emerged with many beliefs that stand in sharp contrast to those held by the Boomers and Builders, two generations in the mid-50s and older. Horoscopes provide useful guidance for their life. No, they don't. It's demonic. It's not fun. Astrology is not good. They get even with those who offend or harm them, and it's defensible. Well, yeah, we can see that. That's pretty much a bumper sticker. God is not involved in people's lives. How do you know that he's not involved in people's lives? They allow people to own personal property, facilitates economic injustice. Again, this is crazy. Karma is a viable life principle. No, it's not. The Bible is ambiguous. You believe you came from nothing and that the strong survive. How can karma fit into that ridiculous thing? The Bible is ambiguous in what it teaches about abortion. Thou shalt not kill. Human beings have developed over a long period of time, less advanced life forms. How does that work? How do you just decide one day, you know, I'll hollow out my bones and I'll decide to grow feathers and learn to fly, and I'll teach myself to fly. And I'll also develop a circulatory system, blood, heart, lungs, eyes. I'll develop oxygen. I'll develop an atmosphere, sun. I'll make plants grow so that I can eat, and water so that I don't die. And then other animals, and be able to reproduce. Of course, evolution is insane. This is not scientific. And they don't believe the Bible is reliable or the inerrant word of God. I have no idea, you know, what people are thinking, but you can understand when parents don't train up their children, this is going to be the natural outcome. So this is the chart that I think is most helpful. 66% of millennials will try anything once, believe in karma, 64%. Humans developed over time from less advanced life forms, 54%. This is why when I speak about creation on college campuses, they just think you're an absolute idiot because they've been brainwashed to believe that somehow nothing can create everything, which is not an intellectual position. This is not intellectual. This is ultimately crazy, this one right here. This is not smart. Reincarnation is a real possibility. They receive guidance from your horoscope. This is the one, you know, I don't know why this surprises me so much, but the Gen Xers and Millennials, 1 out of 3 of them. You see 1 out of 3 of us walking down the road. Hey, we don't like personal property. Take my wallet. Hey, you know, throw your car keys at them. They don't believe that. They don't believe that. I mean, ugh. But 35% think that ownership of property facilitates economic injustice. Get even with people who wronged you. Turn the other cheek? Love? Show grace? No. Get even. Get even. I wonder where we're seeing this right now. Black Lives Matter. Antifa. Universal purpose for all people is to know, love, and serve God with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength. 19%. Lowest ever in this chart. Universe was designed and created by God, sustained by God. 30%. That doesn't really make sense. But I think this is the therapeutic deism that he's mentioning. God is all-knowing, powerful, just creator. 31%. Human beings were created by God in his image, but are fallen creatures, 40%. You know, it's strange, but that's higher than you'll see down here. Satan is a real influential being, deeply committed to practicing my faith, 45%. Okay, down here, 57% of millennials consider themselves to be a Christian. Well, not based on the stuff up there. 45% praise and worship God each week. 43% don't care if God exists. And then here's where I think you really see it. This is why it's not true. 44% are moral therapeutic deists. 9% believe in biblical theism. If you're not in this 9%, you're not in this 57%. I've got news for you. And the same is true for these other categories. The Gen Xers, 38% moral therapeutic deism. 70% said they're Christian, but only 22% believe the Bible. If you don't believe this one, you're not going to be in that other category of Christian. It's not going to happen. Look at this. Nihilists. They're more nihilist in my generation than there are biblical theists. They're more Marxists than biblical theists. I mean, how did we get here? Well, the school systems are just horrendous. They're absolutely horrendous. And they're teaching people secular humanism, which leads to nihilism. Ultimately, if you're not in this camp, you will end up here as a nihilist or Marxist or these others because you just don't care anymore. You say, well, we can't know, or I don't care, or whatever. It all kind of works out in the end. And it doesn't work out in the end. It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God. God has given you a conscience in creation. You know there's a creator. And Jesus didn't just leave us here like, well, we'll wonder who he is. He lived among us and we crucified him. He died and rose from the dead. You have the Bible. You are without excuse. Okay, let's see what else we've got here in cheery Mr. George Barna's survey here. Government should continue to expand its reach and authority and power and spending to facilitate a more desirable way of living. Oh, the history problems with this. The history problems. Number one, wow, this is terrifying. You do not want this. This is absolute stupidity, number one. Number two, public policy should be more flexible and fluid, but the synchronistic worldview they possess means that American culture would also be less predictable and consistent than in the past, owing to the inherently contradictory worldviews of positions adopted by Americans. More episodes of violence and combativeness across the nation attribute to the self-righteous and sense of personal sovereignty maintained by emerging adults. I agree with this. 100% number three is happening right now. They feel that they're not getting their way as a personal threat or challenge. No, it's called you're not the center of the universe. Political tensions will remain significant in the short term due to divergent views of core perspectives. So this is Barna's advice. This is probably very important for us to look at. A redefined Christian community that will be smaller in number, less influential, and less economically robust. That will include changes such as fewer people and less money being designated to global Christian missions, existing privileges received by churches. Tax exemptions are gone, according to Barna. Land use will be gone. Yeah, that's coming. Interpersonal relationships will be more difficult to sustain due to declining levels of trust, diminished witness to compromise, heightened reliance on technology for communication, and disappointments produced by the lack of moral consensus. Wow, Barna, he's cutting right to it. Reshaped family units, given fewer formal marriages, increased levels of the divorce and separation, liberalized sexual morality, and the reduced appeal of raising children. Children are amazing. They're a gift from God. And they're one of the reasons that God created people was to raise up godly children. So he says here, we're facing a challenging time for the Christian church. It's the 30th anniversary of Barna's best-selling breakthrough, The Frog in the Kettle. Thanks, Barna, 1990. And Gen Xers and millennials have solidified dramatic changes in the nation's central belief systems and lifestyle. You know, I don't know how we got here, but, well, I do know. We took the 10 Commandments out of school. That was the number one, because then you gave up moral authority and there was no more basis for reality. And then you ushered in liberalism and replaced it. They didn't remove this idea. They just replaced it with postmodernism. And it's ultimately self-defeating, refuting, and it's a petard. It's going to eat itself. Barna lamented the direction the youngest adult generation is in the United States have embraced. Millennials are leading the way toward the new worldview emphasis in America, he stated. The research reveals their rhetoric is often inconsistent with their behavior. Yeah, this is called hypocrisy, and this is the thing that drives me crazy because it's not a logical issue. This is not a rhetorical issue. They cannot think their way out of a paper sack, and they have never thought about logic or never thought about why positions are right and wrong. They just assert them, and then if you yell and get loud and shame people and try to cancel them, then you get your way. People do what they believe. If behavior does not coincide with stated beliefs, we know that people do not truly believe those beliefs. You will know them by their fruit. That is true. Anyway, you can check this depressing 7 pages out for yourself. I'll probably do some more videos on this because this was just a first look at this. And I was just kind of reading through and reacting to it in real time. But hopefully this is helpful. I'll post a link to it. And if you haven't yet, please hammer that like button, like the 95 Theses, and maybe your hope for the future of this country. And subscribe to the channel. We would greatly appreciate it. Trying to reach these young whippersnappers. And if you're one of them, you need to repent and trust in the death, burial, and resurrection of the God-man Jesus Christ. There's only one way because the true and living God is not up to debate. It's not up for debate or even up for your opinion. It's based on reality, and the reality you live in is God's world. And so he's coming back, and so you must be reconciled to him because you have rebelled against your Creator from all of this. It's obvious. Case closed. And thank you for watching, and God bless.